Ja, hallo, einen wunderschönen guten Abend.
Hello.
Heute zum
A
nächsten
wonderful good
Interview
evening today
mit
for the next interview
Wolfgang
with
Bucher.
Wolfgang Bucher.
Ja, heute
Yes,
ist der
today is
18.
February
Februar
18th, and
und
as
wie
promised, we will
versprochen
take a
werden wir
look
uns
at
heute
something
mal etwas
today.
anschauen.
We
Wir
had
hatten ja
already
letztens im
talked about the
Programm schon
program
einiges
recently,
angedeutet
hinted at it,
und es
and
würde
now
mich
we
jetzt
want
mal
to get a
wirklich
complete
überblicken und eine
overview
grobe
of what the
Überblick
Bucher
verschaffen,
Coaching
was
System
das Bucher
actually
Coaching
includes.
System überhaupt alles beinhaltet. Also Wolfgang,
So,
kannst du
Wolfgang,
uns mal
can
kurz
you
den Weltunfall
briefly show
zeigen?
us
Ich
in
glaube,
what
es waren
form? I think there
9
were 9 main
Hauptprogramme und noch
programs
einige
and a few
Unterkomponenten.
subcomponents.
Yes, 8 main programs, one subcomponent, and it's best to briefly share my screen and then I can get started.
Und dann kann ich mal loslegen. Also zunächst mal.
So first of all, you can see me. I am a business IT specialist, managing director of Bucher GmbH, software developer. I have to quickly move this line away.
No, you can see the presentation and the two pictures. It's okay, you can see it.
Okay, sehr gut.
Okay, very good. And we developed the software at Bucher GmbH, which is then called Bucher Coaching Systems. It is a system in the complementary medicine sector. Today, I think it will be about the Vita Coach. We already discussed that last time, or the time before last, I think. But first, I want to take a step back and show the higher level software.
Übergeordnete Software zeigen. Das wäre im Prinzip
In principle, that would be the Bucher Coaching Systems software, and it consists of 8 main programs and an additional program plus a few modules that are available separately and are not always included. This central program practically contains what you have licensed, what you buy, which is imported by us, and can be used with this Bucher Coaching System.
Dort eingespielt und kann mit diesem Bucher Coaching Systems benutzt werden.
It essentially consists of client administration, where I can enter addresses, record the patient's data, backup data, and organize the entire program.
Datensicherung macht, das ganze Programm organisieren kann.
In principle, this is the Bucher Coaching System, and the various programs are integrated there, such as the Bucher Vita Coach, which we will now discuss.
Bucher Vita Coach, den wir jetzt im Anschluss gleich besprechen wollen, aber auch
There is also the Bucher Business Coach, for example, which is identical to the Vita Coach but specifically tailored to management consulting, with exactly the databases that are needed there. Then we have the Bucher Aura Coach, which basically scans the energies and life energy of people, allowing me to see how much energy is in the chakras and what blockages exist.
Wie viel Energie ist in dem Chakra drin und welche Blockaden gibt es dazu?
Additionally, there is the Corpus Analyzer, which I can unlock.
Den ich freischalten kann, und da geht es Blut und
It's about
Körperwerte,
blood
die
and
man
body
scannen
values that
kann.
can be scanned.
Wir
We have
haben,
TAO
Tao
Medical, which is
Winkel,
software in the
das ist
field of
eine,
Chinese medicine, focusing on I Ching and
Software im Bereich der
acupuncture.
chinesischen
This allows
Medizin.
for effective
Da
scanning
geht's
and
um
analysis.
I Ching und Akupunktur. Kann man also auch sehr gut damit scannen oder Dinge herausfinden. Das sieht dann so aus. Wir haben
Then there is
Light
cosmic lights balancing,
das
which
ein
sheds light
bisschen
on the
die
patient's astrological
astrologische,
background. However, it is important not only to accept astrological dispositions, but also to try to correct them using planetary colors.
Nicht nur die astrologische Disposition akzeptieren muss, sondern versucht über die Planetenfarben auch das zu korrigieren. Dann haben wir
Another program is Bucher Bioresonance Triselect, a bioresonance system that records body or cell vibrations, attempts to improve them, and then sends them back. We also have color tuning, which is structured like an aura system, but divides the individual chakra areas into further sub-areas.
Bereiche sind noch in weitere Teile unterteilt. Und dann gibt es noch
Additionally, there is an extra program called Stress Balance, which can be used to reduce stress. For example, the patient receives the instruction, please calm the butterfly.
Man sagt dem Patienten, jetzt beruhige mal den Schmetterling, der flattert
It
normalerweise
usually
ein
flaps
bisschen
its wings
aufgeregt.
excitedly.
Und indem ich
By
das
mentally
mache,
trying to calm
beruhigt
it
er sich,
down,
weil
a feedback
über
loop is
diese
created between the
Feedback-Schleife,
butterfly
die
or
dann
the
entsteht
software
zwischen dem
and the
Schmetterling
person.
oder der Software und dem Menschen,
This initiates an effect in which, as I calm the butterfly, the system detects this, causing the butterfly to become calmer, allowing the stress reduction effect to be followed directly on the screen.
Direkt am Bildschirm verfolgen.
Additionally, there are two optional modules that can be added. The interblend, where I embed radionic packages, the information I want to regulate, into music, allowing the music to function as a transmitting radionics device.
Einbette und somit die Musik wie ein sendendes Radionikgerät läuft.
There is even music available that can be used and given to patients, which is GEMA-free, meaning no additional fees need to be paid. The second important option is the fractal technique, which generates abstract color pattern images. These images prompt the patient to associate on a subconscious level, bringing buried problems to the surface where they can be addressed. And if they surface, then we can address and resolve them.
Zu assoziieren und Probleme an die Oberfläche zu holen, die seither einfach vergraben waren und die dann an die Oberfläche kommen, und wenn sie da sind, dann können wir die lösen.
Finally, there is the collective dispatch feature, which is not an optional module but is always included because we consider it so important. This allows therapists to send packages via our server to other therapists and vice versa, enabling mutual reinforcement. We could also create a separate video specifically on this topic. It is an excellent way to strengthen certain effects or to distribute responsibility when it feels overwhelming, making it easier to share the workload. This is a brief overview of what the Radionics software does. It is a radionics software within the energetic field, specifically in the realm of consciousness medicine. We analyze resonances in our databases, which include a vast range of life-related aspects, allowing us to determine whether a particular entry resonates. This process helps us identify root causes, which is crucial, and then initiate energy transfers to neutralize or resolve these causes. Additionally, we can generate information carriers. I can show some examples later. In principle, we support the patient's self-healing abilities. It is important to emphasize that we do not have a healing device or a medical device, but rather we guide the patient toward health.
Sondern wir beraten den Patienten in Richtung Gesundheit. Wir coachen ihn sozusagen.
Which is why anyone can use this system, whether they're a naturopath, doctor, healer, or even someone without formal training who relies on their life experience, such as a coach.
Oder einfach nur ein Coach ist.
Ultimately, why can this system change your life? The key is that symptoms always have underlying causes. If we eliminate the causes, the symptom loses its reason for existing. Our goal is to help the patient set a positive and healthy objective and guide them in the right direction. We transfer what can also be described as thought energy. We use information carriers, and the entire process is based on subtle energy. That would be the most important information for now. A first general overview.
Informationsträger, und das Ganze basiert auf dieser feinstofflichen Energie. Das wäre jetzt erstmal das Wichtigste, der erste Überblick.
You also mentioned that you would make a separate video about the Bucher collective broadcast. And of course, this applies to other topics as well. We will now choose one of these 8 or 9 programs. As you can already see on the screen, we will take the Bucher Vita Coach. If there are any requests for us to show the Aura Coach or any other program in a short version, please write them in the comments below or let us know later in the Telegram group. Depending on how many requests we receive, we will create 1 or 2 additional videos. Let's first take a look at the Bucher Vita Coach, this program from Bucher Coaching Systems, and start, logically, as a therapist, healer, doctor, or alternative practitioner would, with the client system. So please, Wolfgang, show us the Bucher Vita Coach, and let's get started.
Ganz genau.
Exactly. I will leave the screen unlocked as it is now so that you can see everything I am referring to. Here we have a welcome screen that appears when you start the program. You can see the most important key data of the program. Additionally, we have integrated a chat function. If you have an important question, you can ask it here, and I will try to answer it. Now let's move straight to the clients. When I click on it, the client list opens. These are all patients that I have registered in the program, and here I can add new patients, make changes, and include additional information.
Zusätzliche Infos aufnehmen. Wir gehen mal hier beispielsweise kurz rein.
Let's go in for a moment. For example, we have settings here. We can take a photo, add comments, so you can record anything you might want to remember about the patient or might need later. That would actually be the most important function of the client window.
Später wieder braucht. Das wäre eigentlich das Wichtigste zu dem Klientenfenster.
Now let's move on to the database window.
You can see that there are many settings available. You should go through them first. There are certain requirements regarding which program entries are needed for it to work correctly. If the entries are insufficient, the program notifies us of what else needs to be filled in. Otherwise, of course, the more information you enter, the better. The Bucher Vita Coach is based on many databases, created by numerous users. We have just arrived at this point. In the overview, all databases are already loaded for you. I don't know whether you want to show how to integrate the databases into the program, check whether they are all up to date, or move on to the next step straight away. You can explain what you want now. Because I think if we were to explain everything in detail, it would turn into a 10-hour video, and we want to try to keep it well under an hour.
Yes, exactly. We can do that too. For this example, if you want to see it, I'll just delete the database of Buddhist wisdom here. Now it's no longer there. I have already loaded all the databases here. When I reinstall the system, there are no databases at first. But if I then right-click here and select Import Databases from the Internet, I get a list of all the databases we make available to our customers. In this list, the databases that have not yet been loaded are displayed in red. The databases that have already been loaded are displayed in green. So even if we add databases later, you can see which ones are missing. They are automatically ticked, meaning that I simply click on Import, and the database that I don't yet have is downloaded from Bucher GmbH. Once it's imported, we can find it here and start working with it. Databases can be imported with ease. Otherwise, the databases mainly come from our customers. Someone creates a database and thinks, I could actually share this with Bucher GmbH so they can distribute it further. This is how almost all of our databases have been created. Every customer then gets access to these databases free of charge. However, from time to time, someone has a special field that is unique and important to them. Which means there will always be something missing. We can't possibly include everything, but we at least try to cover as much as we can. But if something is missing, you can create it yourself under My Databases. This means I can create a new database here, for example. Under My Databases, I right-click on New Database. I can't think of a name at the moment. Let's take Medication 2. And then this database is created. Now I can easily add new entries, for example, aspirin. And then this entry is there. I can also scan it by placing the aspirin on an input cup and selecting Read. This means I can use the databases provided by Bucher for scanning, or I can create my own and add any missing entries.
Datenbanken nutzen beim Scan oder ich kann eben eigene Datenbanken aufnehmen und das ergänzen, was mir vielleicht noch so fehlt.
Of course, creating your own database is quite a complex topic, but once you know how to fill it out, it becomes relatively quick. If you want to create many entries, there is another option using an Excel table, which can then be imported. As you may have noticed from the many language options here, the system is highly multilingual. There are approximately 20 languages. I haven't counted them exactly, but it supports a broad range of languages.
Yes, of course, I have activated quite a few languages here for testing purposes. Normally, customers get the languages they specifically request activated. Not only does the database change, but the entire program can also be displayed in the corresponding language.
That was just a small note to highlight that the system allows everyone to use their native language. On the one hand, you can create your own databases, but you can also obtain them from others, exchange them, or update them. One thing that wasn't visible before: if a database has been corrected or modified, it appears in dark green.
That means it is already imported into the program, but an older version is still in use. This way, you can immediately see which databases have been updated. When you import a dark green database, the old version in the program is automatically deleted and replaced with the new one. At the moment, I don't have any red databases here because they have all already been imported.
I had remembered the color as yellow, though. You can see how long it has been since I last updated a database. Or maybe there just haven't been any updates recently.
That could be the case as well.
Well, okay. Then we have now gone through client administration very briefly and quickly. I can already see your mouse cursor on the scan button, the button where we can start scanning. So you probably want to show us how to work with the program and what options are available.
Exactly, that would be the next logical step. First, the patient comes in and I add them to the program or look for them in the client database. When it comes to the databases, I may have already prepared or organized everything in advance. The next step would then be the scanning process itself. I click on this button and the scan window appears. Here too, I have the databases listed as usual on the left, as well as the ones we have marked. Then, at the top, I have the settings for how I want to scan. We don't need to go into too much detail now. There are different options available. Now the patient arrives, and I talk to them about their symptoms. Let's say they have a headache, are feeling depressed, have knee pain, or are experiencing relationship issues with their partner. The topics addressed in this conversation essentially determine which databases I can select here. For example, I would like to take a look at the essences. Now I'm choosing something without thinking too much about it, but in principle, I can select something related to the relevant topic. For instance, if it's about psychological issues like depression or something similar, I can go into the corresponding category and select the appropriate databases. Similarly, for stress-related concerns, I can check various options to explore different factors. Whenever I check a box, the selected database is scanned to determine whether it resonates with the patient. If it does, the relevant entries that are important for the patient are inserted into the final package, which I can then review. This process must happen in direct communication with the patient, so I know which databases to select. However, I can also save sets. I'll just mention that briefly. For example, if a patient comes in with depression, I can compile a relevant selection of databases and save this set under depression. When the next patient comes in with similar concerns, I can simply load the saved set instead of going through everything again and thinking about what I should select for depression. This feature is very helpful, and over time, whether over months or years, it can save a great deal of time while allowing me to quickly access pre-configured sets whenever needed.
You can do this using the buttons at the top left.
Exactly these two here.
Of course, we won't click on them now. There are even more buttons up there that serve different functions. Now, regarding the middle window above the client's picture, can you explain a bit about that? There are 5 options for determining the type of scan.
Here I can choose how the system should search through the databases. Should it combine all databases into one large set and extract something from them? This means that sometimes a database might not be selected at all if it doesn't contain anything relevant. Alternatively, I could set it to every database, meaning that if I choose a scan depth of 1, it would pick 1 entry from each selected database. If I set it to 3, the program would select 3 entries per database, essentially the top 3 results from each. These are details that might become more relevant later. In the beginning, most users will likely leave this setting on automatic, so they don't have to think about it at all. The computer automatically determines the best approach. There's also the field of focus, which might be important for some people. Here, I can set a specific intention for the scan. For example, I could write "dissolving headaches" to give the scan a particular focus. This means that the system is now specifically scanning for the topic of headaches, identifying possible causes, related problems, and potential solutions. If needed, I can also rename the scan accordingly. Otherwise, it will simply be labeled as "scan with date." This way, later on, I can see from the scan's name what I was thinking at the time, what is included, and what purpose this scan package is intended for. Once I've set everything up, I can press the scan button, marked by the single triangle, to prepare the scan. I'll show this on the screen. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly when the image is small, but it will appear there. At this point, I hold the CA sensor and the scan begins. Once the scan is prepared, I take the CA sensor in my hand and the scanning process starts. The indicator light turns green. If I let go at any point, the scan pauses but can continue again when I hold it again. Essentially, this sensor is used to determine what resonates with me. The system presents various entries to me, attempting to trigger a response. It then identifies which entry causes the most stress, and the entry with the highest stress level within a given database is written into the results list. I will now hold the CA sensor for a moment until the scan is complete. Additionally, the fractal is now being calculated. If you activate this extra option, a fractal will be individually generated for the patient. This means that an image is created specifically related to the patient, displaying potential solutions and underlying problems. When the patient looks at this image and allows it to impact them, it can bring suppressed issues or even unknown influences to the surface. Factors that may have been affecting them without their awareness. You can see the fractal displayed behind the virtual person. This is the unique fractal that has just been created.
We will showcase the hardware later, and you can enlarge the image to view it more clearly. At the end of the process, the patient will see their fractal image. They also have the option to download it onto their phone or PC as a background image for continuous exposure, or even print it out. I believe you will demonstrate this in the next overview. Now that we have completed a scan, how would you proceed with working on it?
First, I would discuss the scan with the patient. That means I would go to the section for sending and reporting. In this case, we navigate to the report section. Here we can see our scan, which we previously named under the motto headache. Let's take a look at the results. We can see entries like dissolve inner emptiness, suffering, and dissolve criticism, among others. These are the resonances that the system has identified, and we can now discuss them with the patient. We also have an intensity scale, which helps determine which issues are particularly significant. If an entry is of maximum importance, it would be marked as 100. If it is minimally relevant, it would be below 10 or even closer to 0. Now, the key point is that we need to go through these entries with the patient, because what is listed here represents the relevant topics at play. However, they are not diagnoses or medical conditions. Even if an entry says something like measles, this does not mean that the person currently has measles. Instead, it indicates that they have interacted with or thought about this topic in some way. The resonance could be relatively weak, but in some way this frequency has been present in their thoughts. Perhaps they were reminiscing about having measles as a child. Maybe their child currently has it. Or perhaps another child in their kindergarten had it, and now the patient is worried about their own child contracting it. So the vibration is there. It may be influencing their environment, but it does not necessarily have to be affecting the patient directly. This is an important distinction. These are resonances, not diagnoses. You also need to communicate this very clearly to the patient. If you plan to print out the results, for example, the patient must understand that this is not a diagnosis, but simply a topic that needs to be discussed. If I say to the patient, "Here is the entry measles," what comes to mind? A story will emerge. At first, they might wonder, what does measles have to do with me? But then something will come to the surface, a past experience, a thought, or an association. It is important to observe the patient's reaction to this story. Does it carry emotions? For example, does a tear fall? Does their voice falter? These can be strong indications that there is an active resonance still unresolved for them.
Resonanz ist, die immer noch nicht gelöst ist bei ihm. Wir suchen also zum Beispiel, hier haben wir innere...
Take the entry resolving inner emptiness, for example. If a person feels lonely at home and experiences a deep inner void, I might ask, do you ever feel an inner emptiness?
Fühlst du manchmal eine innere Leere?
If tears flow or a significant emotional reaction follows, then this is exactly the topic we need to explore further. In many cases, this unresolved issue could be the very cause that triggered the symptom. We go through this process with all the entries in the scan. For those that do not elicit a response or are too complex, we move on. For example, if the entry says aluminum compounds, as a patient, you might not immediately understand what that relates to. For me, it would be simple. I recently sawed an aluminum bar, so maybe I picked up a bit of aluminum there. However, there are also entries where it's not immediately clear why they appear in the scan. Regardless, we still leave them in the scan, because there was a reason why this vibration is present. Maybe we won't understand the reason today, but next week or even next year, it might suddenly make sense. We don't need to immediately understand every single entry. Instead, our focus should be on identifying what is most emotionally burdensome for the patient. That is the crucial part. Once we have determined which themes are relevant and what issues the patient is dealing with, the next step is to develop a goal together.
Dann müssen wir mit ihm zusammen ein Ziel erarbeiten oder einfach ein Ziel.
We need to help them find out what changes they need to make in their life to stop triggering their symptom repeatedly.
Was verändern muss, dieses Symptom, das hat, nicht immer wieder neu anzutriggern über diese Resonanzen, die wir hier gefunden haben. Nehmen wir mal an, machen wir gerade mit den Masern weiter.
Let's take the measles in kindergarten example. If a parent is afraid that their child might get infected, or even that they themselves could catch it, I can add this insight as a supplement to the problem statement I initially entered.
Zu dem Problem, das ich vorhin eingegeben habe, das Immunsystem von, nennen wir mal, Hans.
For example, if the son's name is Hans, I could enter, Hans's immune system and my immune system are working optimally.
Damit habe ich zum Beispiel jetzt
This means I have strengthened and aligned my immune system to protect myself and react accordingly when encountering such viruses.
Zu beschützen und darauf zu reagieren, wenn solche Viren beispielsweise mit mir in Kontakt kommen.
It is really beneficial to enter a goal statement like this. Let's assume that the headache originates from work-related stress. In this case, I could write something like, I organize my work optimally. This would mean ensuring that I don't become overworked. Perhaps I can create a better balance in my work life.
Ich kann vielleicht einen Ausgleich schaffen zu meiner Arbeit. Ich kann versuchen, diesen Stress.
I might try to reduce stress, have a conversation with my boss, or, if necessary, request a transfer to another department.
Ich muss auf jeden Fall das lösen, was mich belastet.
I must address what is burdening me, because if I don't, symptoms will appear. Our goal is not to suppress symptoms, as is often done, but to resolve them sustainably. We can achieve this by identifying and eliminating the underlying cause.
Das wäre also dazu zu sagen, und dann haben wir im Prinzip jetzt ein Paket zusammen. Und dieses Paket,
now that we have compiled a package, we can transfer it to the patient's field. To do this, simply press the Start button at the bottom. I will do that now, and then you can take the hand electrode in your hand again. Currently, rapid transfer is switched on. This is the fastest transfer method available. However, if the patient is present, I would not recommend using this mode. Instead, I would choose slow or medium speed. The speed of transmission does not affect quality. Whether I send the information quickly or slowly is irrelevant to the morphic field. However, it does matter to the patient. If the transmission is too fast, the patient may not fully absorb it or engage with it emotionally, which could make the process feel unsatisfactory.
At the bottom, you can adjust the speed levels by simply clicking on the different options. For those who are not yet familiar with the program, there are additional columns that allow you to examine each entry in detail. We won't go through them all now. But if you click on the first eye symbol, you can see the detailed view of each entry. One more important thing to mention is the potency column, where you'll find D, LM, and C potencies. Could you briefly explain that?
Yes, if you want, you can scan the potencies. These are derived from homeopathic potencies. D potencies are more material, meaning they are less diluted.
Potenzen, das heißt, da ist keine so starke Verdünnung vorgesehen.
C potencies are more diluted than D. LM potencies are highly diluted and act on a very subtle level. Many people use this as a guide for interpretation. For example, if something appears with a D potency, it typically relates to a physical or acute issue. Let's take the entry suffering as an example. If it appears in D9 potency, this suggests that the issue is relatively recent, perhaps occurring within the last 1 or 2 weeks. If the potency is C, then the issue may have been present for several months. If it's LM, then we are potentially looking at a long-term issue. Let's quickly check an example. Under stress, we find an entry that refers to damage to the blood-brain barrier, which allows toxins to penetrate directly into a child's brain. This is essentially a toxic substance that could have harmful effects.
Giftstoffe direkt ins Gehirn des Kindes eindringen können. Also das ist praktisch so ein Giftstoff, der eben negativ wirken kann. Und da kann ich auch gleich was dazu sagen.
However, I'd like to clarify something important. Our system is designed with protection mechanisms. If negative elements appear in the scan, they are not transmitted as negative influences, but rather as a form of protection against these things. The system automatically recognizes if an entry represents something harmful, and it transforms it into a positive countermeasure or protective energy. In this case, if I were to send this information, it would be transmitted as protection against this substance, rather than reinforcing the negative influence. This could indicate that based on the potency, this has been a long-standing issue. For example, if a child has been vaccinated, this type of entry could potentially be related to something found in the vaccine. Or the issue could be related to furniture or substances evaporating from the apartment. In that case, it would likely be a long-term issue. The potency levels allow us to estimate the duration of a problem, while the intensity values determine the relevance of each entry. The intensity scale is used to create a ranking of resonances, meaning that the strongest resonance is listed at the top, while weaker ones gradually decrease in intensity the further down the list they appear. I personally use a threshold of 50, meaning that I closely examine all entries above 50, while those below 50 serve more as secondary references or cross-references. Sometimes you'll notice that lower-ranked entries correspond with higher-ranked ones, reinforcing a particular theme. But if nothing above 50 seems relevant, then, of course, I might explore the lower entries as well.
I'm not sure if you were planning to mention this anyway, but the program has many predefined standard settings, which can be adjusted based on individual preferences. If you click on the small gear icon, you'll see that there are a lot of customizable options. Feel free to demonstrate some of these settings or explain further if you'd like.
The changes primarily influence which hardware I want to use for sending or scanning. This settings window is also accessible within the scan window. If I don't select anything, all connected devices are automatically used simultaneously. This is particularly advantageous if, for example, I don't have the CA sensor connected, but instead have the Tweaklite attached. In that case, the system will automatically perform the scan with the Tweaklite instead. On the right side, we have various broadcast settings that determine how the transmission is conducted. Here I can adjust the intensity, define whether it operates day and night, specify a time frame, or decide whether the broadcast should run indefinitely. A crucial point, which will be more relevant later during transmission, is the duration of effect on a person. Setting it too long is not advisable. For example, if someone has a headache and I set the effect duration for 1 year, I am essentially instructing their self-healing ability to gradually reduce the headache from 100 to 0 over an entire year. This is, of course, a long time. A better approach would be to limit the duration to 4 weeks. This means that within 4 weeks, the self-healing power should work to resolve the headaches. Instead of putting it under pressure, it now has a clearer and faster goal to work towards. Then the healing process will progress faster. The more time I allow for healing, the more time it will take. That's why the preset 4 weeks is a good choice. However, I can't set the duration to just 5 minutes, because, for example, if I cut my finger and it's bleeding, I can't expect it to heal completely within 5 minutes. Healing takes time. The cells need to repair the wound, and the mind and thoughts need to shift from negative, destructive patterns to positive, health-focused ones. This transformation doesn't usually happen overnight. Sometimes it does, but in most cases, it takes time. That's why 4 weeks is a reasonable time frame. Everything is preset, so as a beginner, I don't need to change anything. I simply press scan, analyze the results, define a goal, and then press send. The system transmits the information to the patient, and that's it. There's nothing else I need to do.
For well over 99% of cases, the default setting is a great choice. There are, of course, additional functions within the program that allow customization, adjustments, or modifications, but these are things that some users may explore later as they gain experience. By default, the setting is 28 days, 4 weeks, with transmissions every 4 hours. One important point, perhaps I didn't mention it, or maybe it wasn't clear, everything is transmitted at once. The system does not need to remain switched on for 28 days, sending signals every 4 hours. Instead, everything is transmitted at once with a timestamp, meaning the process is completely finished immediately.
It's great that you mention this, as this is a huge advantage of our system compared to others. Most other systems require the computer to stay on, continuously sending the transmissions. However, our computer system sends the information directly into the client's field all at once. Back in 2006, we discovered a remarkable method that allows us to provide the global morphic network, the energetic field in which we are all connected, with the necessary information. We instruct this network to transmit the information into the individual morphic field of the client at the predefined broadcast times. This means that I am simply delegating the transmission task to the morphic field itself, which then handles everything automatically. As a result, I can turn off my computer and the transmission will still continue. This is a major advantage of our system. It functions seamlessly, has been thoroughly tested, and works extremely well. The idea for this method originally came from Yvonne Tobler from Switzerland, and over the years, we have received overwhelmingly positive feedback, confirming that this approach is highly effective.
It is definitely a practical option, and I think it's best to leave it as it is. We've already discussed a lot about this, and there are still many more aspects we could cover, as the program is highly customizable. But I believe you now want to move on to the next point.
Exactly.
We've already transmitted once. Do you want to add anything else, or shall we move on?
Genau.
Gesendet haben wir es ja schon einmal. Willst du dazu noch was sagen oder wie sieht's aus?
In principle, the transmission has been sent, meaning we have completed the process of sending everything into the morphic field, expecting the field to pass the information on to the patient. However, beyond this subtle energetic idea that we have now embedded into the patient's consciousness, there is also the responsibility or task of implementing physical changes. Simply sending the transmission is not enough if the patient continues with the same behavior as before. For example, if someone has a severe cough, the system may indicate that their lungs need healing. But if that person continues to smoke cigarettes, then of course the cough won't go away, because their behavior is directly counteracting the energetic healing process. The patient has to stop smoking for the healing to take effect. But this is where it gets challenging, because making real-life changes is not easy. It could also involve something as simple as eating in moderation, or learning not to get upset with a certain person, like a boss who treats them unfairly. In reality, however, the boss's behavior is not the real problem. The real problem is the patient's reaction to it. And that is where the real change needs to begin. Because how am I supposed to change my boss? I can't change him, but I can change how I react to him. So the change has to start with me. These are the actions I need to take after the transmission. And in fact, they should be written at the top of the introductory text as a kind of task that needs to be completed after the transmission. This approach helps immensely. I actually always recommend writing down the introductory text by hand on a piece of paper and placing it on your bedside table. Then read through it every morning so you stay focused throughout the day. Even if the entire process takes 4 weeks, This way you won't lose sight of your goal. This is a crucial aspect to understand and implement. Additionally, you could also create fractal videos, especially when working with information carriers. For example, you could create a moving harmonious video and even add music to it, which can then be given to the patient to help reduce stress. The patient can easily watch this video in the evening on their phone or on their computer. There are many possibilities. It would also make sense for the patient to come in once a week so that we can check their progress. In other words, we would evaluate how far they have come from their original state to the present. And assess whether the goal has been achieved. We might need to adjust the goal, make corrections, or even repeat the corrected package. This process is done through follow-up scans, which we don't need to demonstrate right now. Just because we send it once doesn't mean that the process is complete. It's essential to check back later and observe how the patient's condition evolves in order to respond accordingly.
The patient must also be aware of what has been transmitted, or to put it another way, if only the information is sent without actively working on it, it will likely lead to just a temporary improvement, and at some point the issue might return. Due to time constraints, we can't demonstrate a follow-up scan at the moment. However, a follow-up scan would reveal the progress and changes, whether they occurred within a few minutes, a week, or even 14 days. The therapist then decides when to perform a checkup based on the individual case.
That's right. I could perhaps show a little bit of the hardware we have so that you can see what can be used. We have a range of devices from expensive to inexpensive. For us, expensive means a price range of around €1,000, while cheap means a price range of around €400. Let's start with the simpler option, Wolfgang.
I think it might be a good idea to turn off the presentation now so that the image is larger and everyone can see what you're holding in front of the camera more clearly.
That would be the CA sensor, for example. It originally comes from the corpus analyzer, but it can be used for all of our products. It has a two-part electrode at the front, with a small built-in colored light that you can also look into without it being blinding. For example, if you have a scar, you could hold the sensor over it and let the light shine directly on it. This offers a variety of options. The sensor is connected to the computer via USB cable and is recognized and displayed accordingly in the system. The next hardware device would be the Tweaklite, which looks like this. In principle, it is also a colored light device, similar to the CA sensor, but much stronger. So when I turn this on, I have a strong light source here. I shouldn't look directly into it because it can be a bit tiring on the eyes. There are also many color options available. I think around 16 million colors can be represented here. The vibration being transmitted is then output through the color and through small frequencies that resonate. Here too, I have the option to shine the light on scars, or, if the person has back problems, I could set up a tripod. There are microphone stands that fit the Tweaklite perfectly. They're not expensive, and I can position it so that it shines on the back, the affected joint, the knee, the hip, or wherever the pain is. Even in cases of irritable bowel syndrome, the light could be directed at the stomach. The important thing with this lamp is that you should look at the reflected light passively, rather than staring directly into it. If you want, you can go even bigger. This is the Bucher Wave Master, which works together with the Tweaklite. You can then insert the Tweaklite here. I'll switch it on and you'll see the light glowing above. It's quite bright. If I want, I can also take objects, like a healing stone or globules, and charge them with energy. Or, if I prefer, I could use liquids, place them on the device, and infuse them with energy. This gives me excellent possibilities. And of course, I can also use magnetic cards. For example, I have an energetic card here, which I could place inside and have an energy transmission applied to it. This can be a very practical application. Let's say someone is afraid of flying, perhaps a manager. This person faces difficulties if they avoid flying, as it would prevent them from attending important appointments. But if they have an energetic card and I program it with affirmations like, "You are safe," you can enjoy the flight. You arrive relaxed and refreshed. You are above everything and can look down at the problems of the world, realizing they are small. By charging the card with these positive energies, the person can gradually break free from the negative thought cycle of, what if the plane crashes? Instead of getting trapped in fear, worrying things like, have I made my will? Or what will happen to my wife if I die? They can shift their focus. These fear and panic scenarios typically intensify the more we dwell on them. So using energetic reinforcement can be an effective way to redirect the mind toward calm and confidence. This could effectively break through a fear pattern using a card like this, for example, making it possible to board the plane with more confidence. An important note: the more often we avoid a fear, meaning we avoid a situation because we're afraid of it, the stronger that fear becomes. Conversely, the more often we face the fear, meaning the more frequently we board the plane despite feeling afraid, the weaker the fear becomes. If you understand this psychological mechanism, you'll realize, I just have to do it. I have to face it. That's how I can eliminate the problem. By applying this principle, you create excellent opportunities for improvement. With the help of this energetic card, a person can support their mindset and gradually overcome the issue. For example, someone who hasn't stepped into an elevator for 30 years due to fear would find it a massive challenge to take that first step. But ultimately, they must take the step themselves. However, the card provides them with the energetic support to help them do it. And that's the beautiful aspect of these energetic tools. They act as subtle reinforcements that help tackle fears and limiting beliefs.
Of course, there are many other ways to apply this concept. For example, a talisman could be charged with supportive energy.
Other meaningful objects like gold coins can also be used. These are especially great for children. A small token of energy can be carried in a wallet as a reminder of support and confidence. One powerful tip I always give, especially for children with learning difficulties, is this. Let the child pick out a special stone that they like. We then charge the stone with energetic intentions for focus, concentration, and learning ability. This way, whenever the child holds the stone, they have a reinforcing anchor to help them stay attentive and learn more effectively. The child is essentially given the instruction. Place the stone at the front of your desk. The stone learns everything you learn. But if you don't study, the stone stays stupid. It won't know anything. However, if you study well, the stone will remember it all. Then, when it's time for your exam, take the stone with you and keep it in your pocket. The result? Exam blackouts occur far less often. A child may sit in an exam, having studied everything, but suddenly freeze due to nerves and anxiety. They become overwhelmed, their mind goes blank, and they can't recall anything, even though they know the material. A charged stone like this can help immensely because it has learned along with the child. It acts as a subtle anchor for recalling information. It can push the stored knowledge back into awareness, so to speak. This makes it a wonderful tool for reducing stress and improving recall.
Okay, I think that was a very detailed and insightful discussion that many people will find interesting. I'm sure some viewers will have questions. Please write your questions in the comments below here or in the Telegram groups. I will also add Wolfgang's links in the video description for further information. We'll see what we might cover next time. Perhaps a deep dive into collective transmission and how it works, exploring other features and techniques from the system. Let's keep it exciting and see what surprises await us.
Genau.
Okay.
Gut.
Dann danke
Thank
für
you
deine
for your
Zeit,
time,
Wolfgang.
Wolfgang.
You're
Sehr
very
gerne.
welcome.
Vielen Dank für
Thank you
deine.
for your time as well.
Schönen Abend.
I wish everyone a
Und,
great evening.
bis
See
bald.
you soon.
Tschüss,
Goodbye
Herr
for now,
Bucher.
your Uwe.
Bis
Until
demnächst.
next time.